the Mac Studio, Studio Display, and the M1 Ultra. This is MacVoices. Today's MacVoices is supported by MacVoices After Dark. Uncensored, off-topic, and always off the wall. MacVoices After Dark is available as a benefit to our Patreon subscribers. Sign up at patreon.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this is part 2 in a 3-part MacVoices live discussion about Apple's peak performance event. This time, the panel digs in deep on the M1 Ultra, the new Mac Studio, and the new Studio Display, and what it might mean as far as a change in Apple's design philosophy. Let's go back and let the panel do the talking.
From everything we saw in the keynote, these chips are going to scream. And of course, you can only get them in a $4,000 computer, which we'll be talking about, I'm sure, very shortly.
Well, 4,000 entry level prices is lower. I mean, 4,000 I think is for the Mac plus the monitor. What they call it, the new.
No, I don't think so.
If you want the M1 Ultra, you have to go for the $39.99.
Yeah. Correct.
Studio.
Oh, okay. So I may have taken misnote that the M1 Studio at $19.99, that was not the Ultra, that was the M.
That's
okay,
the M1.
Sorry.
M1 Max.
It's a single M1 Ultra.
Okay,
right.
Sorry.
Which is still
mistake.
A screamer.
Right.
But
Mike,
yeah, absolutely, it's a screamer. I mean, it's couple comments. One is everything they were doing, they were talking about how fast it is, compare how it's faster than their current Intel-based Mac Pro. So I've got to imagine anybody out there who's doing video of any sort, this is the product for them. Then the second thing is, okay, they haven't tipped their hands on what Mac Pro for pros based on Apple Silicon looks like, and that can be really exciting. But I think that Apple it's clear in retrospect that Intel has held them back for a long time because Intel's had numerous stumbles on their new process technology. But now that TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, is moving ahead on process, and Apple, great design, they're right there with it. You were seeing all this stuff today was basically, I think, the triumph of the transistor. All these new products came out just because Apple had really new kick-ass processors to enable them. And the Mac Studio looks like a great little device. I saw a lot of people were talking about it being ugly, but in that little unit they have much improved cooling system. They also have a power supply for it, which also generates heat. And they have this new chip. So I don't think anyone's really going to care that it's 2.5 or 3 times taller than a normal Mac Mini. It's a really performance beast. So I wish I could just justify buying one, but I don't have a use case for it. But it's an incredible piece of engineering.
Anybody think this is the end of the large iMac? Exactly.
No. Hey, Guy, before we get to that, I want to ask Mike Rose to clarify something. Mike, forgive me if I'm splitting hairs. You said that this was 2 M1 Maxes fused together.
Correct.
My understanding
Ultras.
is
No, the Ultra is the name of the combined chip.
Right.
Right.
But it's in essence 2 M1s. Am I correct about that?
M1 Max.
M1 Pros.
What?
I think it's 2 M1 Pros. With
Max.
No, it's 2 M1 Maxes.
It's M1 Max.
Is it 2?
Yes, it is. They use the term Ultra Fusion. So they took 2 M1 Maxes when they did the demonstration in the lab and fused them together, calling it Ultra Fusion.
The chart behind you is what says
they gave to their interconnect. That was when Johnny came out. I wrote it down here. When I went back, he says, M1 Max has a secret, hidden feature we haven't talked about yet until now. We call it blah 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 blah. It's the Ultra Fusion. So that's the silicon interface between the two chips in that composite package.
Right. Okay, I get that. So when they first went through it, though, I thought it was 2 M1 chips. Now, don't go through the Ultra thing again. I get that, but I thought it was 2 M1 chips as opposed to 2 M1 Max chips.
You can see it on Mark's background.
Yeah, Mark, if you move, you can right behind your microphone.
Yes.
So there. So
right.
I mean, it is clearly double height of the M1 Max, which is the third chip across, third chip from the left.
Okay. All right. Good. I wanted to make sure because honestly, I missed that. So that's good.
So Apple made another dongle, is what we're saying.
Yeah. Hey, Kelly.
So that is Kelly Guimont who has joined us, but she is not on her correct mic. So Kelly, fix your mic because we heard all kind of room stuff. Guy, I wanted to get to your comment though. Is we know that the iMac 27-inch Intel has been removed from the product line. So the question starts to become: is the Studio at the lower level plus the display, which we haven't even gotten to yet, is that the replacement for the iMac?
I get the feeling it is that you've got the smaller iMac, and the Mac Mini is positioned for the low end, which is almost hard to say when you're talking about the M series Macs. And then the two Studio models, with one with the M1 Max and one with the M1 Ultra, are your current mid-range and high range, and with the Mac Pro still to come in the future. But I don't see with the displays that they're now putting out. Basically, what you were spending on an iMac Pro or a high-end 27-inch Intel iMac is roughly the low-end Mac Studio and the monitor. So, what's the point of having a 27-inch iMac?
Apple, in another revolutionary design choice, decided to take the iMac and separate out the machine and built into the back of the monitor into its own device. Honestly, it just seems like a modern take. The thing Brian Chaffin always used to say about the iMac Pro, not always, but for quite a long time, was I don't want to pay 2021 or 2020 or 2022 money for a 2019 machine. Andrew's not. I can hear Andrew nod because Brian used to say that all the time. Mm-hmm. And now you don't have to. Now the money that you're paying is for practically technology from the future. So the stuff that they were showing, I think it was Tom Bridge characterized it with me earlier as leaving a smoking crater where all previous Geekbench scores used to be. And I don't think he's overstating it. That's really that's what we're looking at, seeing what happens when iFixit gets their hands on one and what those insides actually look like in a real life machine and not in Apple's video, and getting to see what that monitor looks like in the wild and figuring out, where these things sort of fit. I think this is the thing that Apple needed to make for two reasons. Number one, while there are people who need more horsepower, there are people who don't need the amount of horsepower that means you could be buying a car or you could be buying a computer. And for those folks, this is definitely the entry level on this is that machine. And so having something that's stepped up a little bit, that's a desktop class machine with professional class hardware in it is pretty exciting. And seeing what this looks like in practice is going to be something I look forward to.
Agreed.
I think this is a key thing, and that Brad put in the chat room that let's see, where is it? They've definitely gone up market with the Studio display, but one can get a Studio with some cheaper $260 monitor, and I think that's where the whole situation becomes a bit more affordable, because the Studio display is 5K. If you go right now on Amazon and price 5K displays, they're right there in that ballpark. You might save a couple $100 by buying, a non-Apple 5K display, but it's the display that really runs the price of this up. And so now I have the option of, if I want the equivalent of an iMac, I could buy the studio display and a Mac Mini. If I want something closer to an iMac Pro, I get the studio and, the studio and the studio display. And my prices are just, in the neighborhood of those two. And by the way, I've got a heck of a lot more power.
Absolutely. I think it makes sense that, if they're transitioning away, that they have their own products and they're modular, right? I mean, you have the Mac Studio with the choice of processors. You have a choice of external displays, either from Apple or other companies. So at some point, we all knew that the iMacs based on Intel processors were going to fall. And it just happened. It was with the announcements today.
That we know of.
But,
I mean, as much as we've been talking about the death of the larger iMac, we really don't know for sure, other than the fact that you can no longer buy a 27-inch iMac
from Apple.
From Apple,
Right.
but that doesn't mean that Apple in August or September won't say, "Oh, by the way, here's a 27 or 32-inch iMac." I don't think they'll do it, but they could.
Or actually, no, I would say, Guy, that I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe there's another Mac Pro upgrade available, because again, if you look at the Mac Pro, the thing about it has 5 or 6 PCI expansion slots. So, from a performance standpoint, maybe the Mac Studio, kicks butt on the current Mac Pro, but from an expandability standpoint, if that's what you need, that product is unrivaled.
Well, there's no reason why you can't that Apple couldn't come out with an M series based Mac Pro that has slots for all of those different cards.
They could, but I'm talking about today. You're talking about the future. So, because I think certainly in 2 years, I bet anyone here a beer or a 6-pack that we're going to see
$50
Apple Silicon based Mac Pros.
What beer's going to cost in 2 years?
They said at the end of the meeting, they said,
careful when you make that bet.
Is Apple, the last thing they said was, only thing left to transition is Mac Pro.
Yeah.
So
we'll talk about that later.
They specifically announced that, we are going to do a Mac Pro that's transitioned. So that's not speculation. They said
that's all that's left.
But the question was, I thought, this is kind of big news. Apple has always been really reluctant to sell you a processor without a monitor. Apple is always like, you can't, people they were, it's like, this is, people have been begging for years, the mythical X Mac, right? They want a mini tower Mac. People have been saying this for 10, 12, 15 years. And Apple is just like, no, we don't do that. We want you to buy a new monitor every time you get a processor. Mm-hmm. And it seems like they've changed their mind. That's sort of a big deal.
This machine, I feel like it, as forward looking as the Big Mac, as I'm going to call it, as forward looking as the Big Mac is, 2 things about that. First of all, this shows up just like the original Mini, like to kind of throw back to the OG Mini. It was bring your own keyboard, KVM, keyboard, video, and mouse. And whatever monitor you want to hook up to it, that's between you and your dongle. And whatever keyboard. Now, speaking of keyboards, I think I owe Mike a new keyboard. Whatever keyboard you like, whatever mouse you like, you can just pull out the thing, pull out the machine that you have, pop this in there, and you're done. And this comes back to that. If you have monitors that are professionally calibrated, if you are a person who needs that XDR display that we saw behind Johnny when he was coming to us from his underground lair, if you are a person who has a very specific monitor need for whatever reason, you have that option with this machine. But also, the interesting thing that I thought Tom Bridge said to me earlier when we were recording an interview was that he said this is the first actual honestly new Mac that Apple has given us in 17 years. And so that's very, that is sort of forward looking, but it's also, it also harkens back to what the point of the original Mini was in the first place, which was take out the one you have and switch over to this new one, and the rest of your landscape need not change. So if you are a person who maybe in the last couple of years, for whatever reason decided you were going to upgrade your home office setup, I can't imagine who would want to have done that in the last couple of years. But if you did, and maybe you decided it was time to go to 4K and bought a new monitor or a nice big monitor, and that's the one you want to continue using, you can get this computer and be completely done with that. Or, swap it out into a professional situation where maybe you're still clinging to one of those Intel cheese graters because it was the only way you could get the horsepower out of the apps you needed, which was another interesting
modularity
thing. Right. But it was another interesting thing that they showed us today was here are the people who are actually developing for this and making software that will really take advantage of all of the horsepower that we're giving you. And that difference, I think, was the part that was really interesting. And this is the moment that I've been waiting for in the entire Apple Silicon transition, is the part when they finally are able to get the software to tap into what they've been giving you. So, even if you bought an M1, an OG M1 machine, like it's a mere mortal M1 machine right now, then all you have to do is install this new software on that. And it's like you got a new computer if this stuff is really optimized to take advantage of the architecture they've got built into those system on a chip setups.
The Mac Pro, I think, has had a couple of all new
form factors
machines in the last 17 years.
But it's still a Mac Pro.
And the MacBook Air.
Yeah.
Well, if you're going to count this Studio as an all new computer, then I think the Mac Pros that came out 2 years ago and in 2013 would have to count as new computers.
I think but it's still a Mac Pro. That's the thing. It's been the cheese grater forever.
Well, the 2013
on the new
wasn't.
One. It wasn't the cheese grater for several years.
And
but I mean, guys.
Yeah, but they never updated it though. I mean, the 2013 sat there like a dead fish that nobody wanted.
This edition of Mac Voices is supported by our Patreon subscribers and Mac Voices After Dark. Ever wonder what happens before the Mac Voices live shows? Or what happens when the show ends or after the live feed closes? That's where Mac Voices After Dark comes in. If you are a Patreon supporter at any level, you get access to the video of our off-camera conversations. Uncensored, unedited, and always off the wall. It's a small thank you to our Patreon supporters who want to peek behind the curtain. Become a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/MacVoices. And thanks to everyone who supports the show. Andrew, Kelly said the one magic phrase that I'm surprised nobody else has brought up. What's missing right now? Johnny Ive.
Yeah. I think Jeff Butts in the chat mentioned earlier how maybe this doesn't really have anything to do with Johnny Ive, but he didn't like the new design of the Mac Studio. Mm-hmm. And maybe, without Johnny, was all about, thin devices. I think, do you guys think this is Apple, like the Mac version of beyond his design now?
They finally put to rest the thinnest, lightest ever, right?
Yeah, thank God.
Yeah.
Well, and
wasn't Ive basically form over factor? I think we're going back to factor over form.
I want better, faster computers. I don't give a crap if it's thin.
Desktop machine. I don't care what it weighs.
Yeah, and I mean, look, Johnny did some amazing designs, and I don't want to, condemn him. That's not the point.
Put it in the Smithsonian.
Now you have. You're going to have a lot of cables coming out of this setup that we're talking about, whether it's Apple devices, Apple monitors, or others. And I'm not sure that's, that was one of the biggest.
Yeah, we saw that.
Magic of ports.
Chuck, we saw that on the video they had for the new Mac Studio. I went and saw it a second time. You have this imagination of this woman who crawls into one of the cooling holes on the back, and then she wakes up and see reality. You have the artist there plugging the thing in. It's turned around backwards, contrary to the way they said, we put ports on the front. This guy had it backwards, and he had a boatload. I think there's a technical term, a metric ass load of cables plugged into that thing. So Yeah, I think this idea of nice, felt, cool, aesthetic design has finally fallen in the interest of expandability and functionality for people who need to plug in lots of different devices in order to get their jobs done. Fortunately, I'm not one of them, but I know a lot of video folks who that thing's going to be that thing, as well as their monitor with its 3 or 4 Thunderbolt ports on the back, are going to be plugged jam packed full of USB-C cables for all sorts of storage and other external devices.
But okay, but the thing is, and look, I'm fine with it. All right, and we still have that form factor in the 21-inch, 24-inch, in the iMac that's there now, 24-inch. So you've still got a 24-inch iMac, and that is not to be underestimated because it has an M1 in it. So it has plenty of power for a whole lot of the market. So you've still got that form factor. It has
an M1 Pro, does it not?
No,
it's the M1
Max.
Just the M1. No, just the M1. Just the M1. But we've talked about this a million times. As when the MacBook Air came out with the M1, just the original M1, what an amazing boost it was. Mm-hmm. So we're all getting a little bit greedy. And do we really need it?
I'm on a Mac. I'm on a Mac Mini, M1 Mac Mini, and this thing is a screamer.
Me too.
And I would love to have either the mid-range or high-end Mac Studio, but considering my workload, I would have a hard time justifying spending $2,000 or $4,000 on a new Mac Studio, as much as I would love to have one.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. You define pro by who can write it off on their taxes. And if you can't write off that $4,000 on your taxes, you're not a professional. You're not using that equipment to make a living.
Feels so justified. Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome, Brittany. I'm here for you. I'm here to support you.
Thanks.
But to look at is it a new computer? The Cube is from 2000, so 22 years ago. The MacBook Air was 2008. So that's 14 years. The last revolutionary form factor is 14 years ago. I think the Studio is emphatically this is the least amount of space we could put this computer in and cool it and put it under your desk or on your desk. It's aesthetically pleasing, but there's no overriding design sensibility besides we took the Mini and we stretched it upward to make room for the fans. That's it. And if you look at the cutaways, literally that's it. The only thing is going on the top of that machine is cooling. So there's expandability in the sense of 4 Thunderbolt ports. But when we are talking about the expandability that lets you put things inside the chassis, that is what we're waiting for with the Mac Pro. That has to be a very different engineering approach than it was with the Intel machines. Intel has Intel chips for all their performance per watt challenges. Don't make it difficult to do expandability in the way that the M1 / Apple Silicon architecture does. And so Apple has a lot of work to do, or has been doing all the work to make the next Mac Pro something where you can literally put expansion inside the box. That's what we're waiting for. But I think I think everybody's sort of in agreement that nobody was looking to the Mac Studio for super aesthetics. It is designed to hide away a little bit and to be out of focus rather than the focus of everybody's attention.
Brittany, I want to make sure you get in here. Mike, though, I have one point I want to make after that, but I want Brittany up first.
Oh, my main thing is just because we knew these chips were coming from that leak doesn't make them any less sexy. They're amazing. I could listen to that chip guy in the chip lab talk all day long about how many transistors there are.
Donnie is the best.
I'm here to tell you, we had that conversation as it was happening.
Just have some bath bombs, you're good to go.
My very patient spouse watched it with fast. 2 curly-haired Apple nerds.
Yeah.
He's a very patient man. Yeah. And I was like, oh, honey, we're going to replay this later, just so you know.
It was still like vacuum tubes.
Boom,
man.
chicka, wow, wow.
I think it just got hot in here.
I mean, it's warm. I'm just saying,
I
Mike,
could JC die all day long.
So, Chuck, before you go, I have just a question or an observation.
Yeah.
And again, on the products again today, they made a point of for their monitor of pointing out how many speakers it has and how it supports spatial audio, and that's been a recurring theme over the past 18 or 24 months. And I'm thinking that for whatever people call immersive reality, AR, the metaverse, all these other things, that for many people, we have screens so we can see graphics. The thing that's missing is, our audio component of ears. And I'm just curious what you and Jeff think before we go out, and then the rest of the panel can talk about, is Apple slowly introducing new technology to get ready for whenever they launch whatever their expected augmented or immersive reality device is. That it's not just audio. Sorry, it's not just video. It's not just aesthetics, but it's also having audio, so that by Imagine here, I could be having a side conversation with Jeff or with Kelly, while you and David are talking. And right now, the apps don't support that. And I think part of that is, okay, do we have devices that are sufficiently powerful to enable that? And then you get into a chicken and egg type of developer question of what comes first. But it seems to me Apple has been silently moving ahead in the quality of their audio devices and the functionality of their audio devices. What do you think?
I think you're right, Mark, but I don't feel qualified to comment on it until I actually see it and hear it. Allegedly we have a better, this better camera. Allegedly we have this amazing sound system. There's no question, at least in my mind, that my laptops have gotten consistently better sound with each model that I've purchased. Now, can Apple overcome some of the design challenges of putting those speakers and having them fire down as opposed to fire at you? I don't know. I want to wait and see. And this, pardon me, this thing allegedly has studio quality mics. Hey, I want to see, what it is, what they can do, as opposed to this Rode broadcaster that I have in front of me. So, right. We'll see. Hey,
so
before
Jeff,
we do,
could you check in? Because I know you guys have a quick time schedule. You gotta leave us all behind for something bigger and better.
Yeah, Jeff, go.
All right, I'll just drop one thing here before we have to leave. The Mac Studio can support 4 of these studio displays. If you hook up 4 of these and it does not support spatial audio spread across all the speakers on all the displays, Apple needs to pack it up and go home.
Good point. I wanted to make one point to Mike's comment about, this device may be designed to be hidden away a little bit, and that is the ports on the front of the device. So I think that it is designed more to sit maybe right under that display where you have access, because now no more reaching around to try to feel and figure out where the port is right there for you to plug in. And if you get the Ultra, you have 2 Thunderbolt ports in front. Otherwise, you have 2 USB-Cs.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. I mean, I am looking, as Guy is, I am participating in the show with a Mac M1 Mac Mini.
You're welcome.
And I've got thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Kelly, for making me buy it. And I've got a USB 3 hub. I've got a Thunderbolt 3 hub. I've got a Drobo. I've got drives hanging off it. I've got a scanner hanging off of it, and like every which way. And it's chaos, but it's fine because I can spin that machine and plug things in the back. But yes, having the front ports and specifically the front SD card slot, they know who they're talking to. There's people who would pay an extra $600 for that machine just because of the SD card slot. Professional photographers, professional videographers. That is how they're getting stuff onto that machine. And yeah, absolutely, it should be right in front where they need it. So
yeah. Hey, Jeff and I are going to cut out. We turn you over to Mr. Ginsburg as your host. Thanks, folks, for being here. David can remind everybody where and when we do this. And we will see you, I guess, hopefully next Tuesday.
Happy belated birthday, Chuck.
Oh,
Yep.
Happy birthday, Chuck.
Oh yeah.
Thank
Happy
you.
birthday.
Birthday, Chuck.
Thank you. Yes,
Happy, happy.
I made it another year. and with that, we say good night.
Good night.
Yeah, great hanging with everyone
See you,
tonight.
Gracie.
Yeah.
Bye.
See you guys.
Let's go ahead and Andrew, I think I saw you in the chat. You had a question. We missed you. So do you remember what you wanted to ask?
Yeah. One of the things that I noticed in the announcement was they referred to this Mac Studio as modular. I didn't understand what that means because, as my interpretation is, it's being modular may mean something like how this newest Mac Pro is, where you can easily take it apart and add your own components and remove them or whatever. But like we've been saying, this Mac Studio is kind of a thicker Mac Mini, and it doesn't look like you can really easily take it apart and replace stuff as you need to.
It means that the monitor is not part of it.
Yeah.
That's what it means.
Okay. Because it's got, I mean, just from what we saw today, it has those big fans and until like Kelly said, and if when iFixit gets their hands on it, we'll get inside this thing and be able to really see what it does. But I don't think it's expandable. I mean, it technically has 6 ports. I mean, there's the 4 on the back, 2 in the front, depending on which model you get. So I don't think it's expandable per se, but it has quite a few ports. I mean, you've got some pretty incredible speeds with the Thunderbolt 4, and then plus you can get the OWC Thunderbolt 4 hub too on top of that. So it's very, in that sense, it's very expandable, but not in a sense physically where it's.
They didn't say
you said that, I'm sorry, Jim. When you said that OWC Thunderbolt 3 hub, I was compelled to reach over and stroke it on the shelf here.
Yeah, I got one of those too.
I have it right here. I have it right here under me here. So
I'm sorry, Jim. It was purely OCD. I'm sorry. Go
it's the only way that the Mac Mini works with its lack of ports is to have something like OWC's Thunderbolt 3 hub.
I'm touching mine now too.
Can I go back?
You're talking about the hub, right?
Drinking.
Yeah.
The hub.
Everybody drink.
Okay.
I'd like it was modular. They didn't say it was expandable.
The MacVoices Live panel's discussion about the Apple Peak Performance event continues in the next edition of MacVoices, where we talk more about the design choices for the Mac Studio and what it might mean about Apple's philosophy toward computers, desktops, and Macs in general going forward. That's next time on MacVoices, and I hope you'll join us. Until then, and as always, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.